A quick take.
Yes.
Testing.
Can you hear me?
Testing 1, 2, 3, 4,
Testing.
5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Yep.
See if we can hear the guns.
Yeah, can you hear the flex?
Guns going off?
Let me make sure I don't have any alarms on.
All right, my mic's right here for you. This will hit both of us.
All right. I would probably pick up if it was there, but whatever. You know.
No,
Don't touch it. It's gonna make all these scratchy sounds.
Yeah, is that better right there?
no, I was just trying to get it closer to Dr. Victoria.
I mean, I could do the same thing.
Just point the mic towards her so both vocals are in
Make
the
sure your
middle.
chain doesn't rub.
Does this twist around or no?
No, it doesn't, dude. These are Amazoners, dude. Gotta be good right there.
All right.
Does that work?
All right. Yeah, I think so.
All right, boom.
Yeah.
They will.
Boom. These shirts are nice, by the way.
Yeah.
These aren't the same material that we use, is it?
Yeah, they are.
It's so soft.
I don't know.
That's
Yeah.
the same thing, dude.
You
So
sure?
try on Ray-Ban, but
Really?
yeah.
Feels
Yeah.
softer to
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
You're not
We've got the back going on.
Yeah, I know. That's cool too. I like that.
Yeah.
That's sick.
We just ironically all wore it today.
Yeah.
What's that?
Yep.
Said we ironically all wore it today.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Worked well.
Christmas, we're gonna get matching sweaters.
Yeah. There we go.
Yeah. 100%.
There we go. Yep.
All right, guys. Hey, welcome to another episode of our TG Wellbeing podcast. I am Dr. Victoria Munoz. This is Elias Wilsey, and Adam Santos.
Boom.
Yeah.
And if you've been watching our episodes, already know that Eli and Adam are owners of the TG Mesa and Phoenix gyms here in Arizona.
That's right.
Yep.
Yep. The only place to be, right?
Only place to train and to grow.
That's
Yep.
right. This is
Yep.
where it's happening.
It's where you graduate, right here.
That's right.
Yep.
Yeah, if you've been to any other gym, well, this is the deal, because you want to get results and you want to work with real trainers and people that really know the science behind training and the physiology behind training and the medicine and the medical implications of diet and hormones, then this is a place to be. And
Amen.
we have joined together to create this amazing program called the TG Wellbeing program.
Yeah.
And what we're doing is we're bringing science and medicine to you to help optimize you as a human being.
Mm-hmm.
Not only in the gym, but outside the gym. And so what we do is we come here and we bring different topics that will help you just to learn and to grow as a optimized human being. So today we really want to drive home food, diet, and how it affects our performance. And
Yes.
if anything, you're sitting in front of a panel of people that really understand this and how it works, how it's worked for us. And we're also going to talk about some differences in maybe our opinions and our ideas about diet and the science behind macronutrients. Macronutrients are a very controversial issue amongst people that.
We'll have some controversy.
Yep.
But Victoria's the only doctor, so.
So many of you who may be competing or pro understand the importance of diet and how it affects your performance. Most of the knowledge out there is contributed to making sure that you count your carbs and that you cycle your carbs. And I have a different idea about that, and I'm going to talk about that as well. But Eli here, he has competed and he's actually gone pro. I have competed, I've not gone pro. I'm probably going to put competing aside for a while because I'm more focused on my career and helping you guys get the information that you need. And
Helping us be pro.
And Adam he's hit it hard. I don't know. Have you competed?
I have not competed.
What Adam's done is he's dieted for nearly just as much shows as I have, usually around his birthday, and then does a peak week, does a water drop and everything, and then just goes hard on his birthday and reverses.
Yep.
So Adam's literally done like basically fake prep shows all the way up to like a prep or all the way up to a show date, and then just gets his best body for his birthday, and then doesn't compete and coaches people.
Yep. So
I'm speaking for him.
I've dieted. I've done preps, but I don't care to get on stage. But I've coached a lot of people, So who've done well, some pros as well. So curious to talk about nutrition because obviously I've been doing it one way, and you have the knowledge, you have the research. So really cool to see where this goes today. So
and I've also participated in the traditional way of going about it. I've competed, I've won shows, and I've had some really good guidance from various people, and I did well. But with the new knowledge that I have and understanding the species appropriate way of eating, it's really changing the way that people are approaching their training and the results. So, hey, Eli, why don't you start by kind of talking about how you've trained and prepped for shows?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I've done so many different preps, and I've had a lot of good different coaches. And I prepped, I mean, me and Adam, when I was 18 years old, we kind of ran my first show in Peking. And I was reading old school bodybuilding books, encyclopedia bodybuilding, and we just kind of knit it together. I mean,
sherbet ice cream.
So, I carved up on sherbet ice cream. It went horribly. And then the second show after that, I did different diets where I carved up on just dry potatoes and no diuretics, just dropping water naturally, and a plethora of different shows from 18 to 32 now, trying to figure it out, and with a bunch of different coaches. And pretty much I've just got a bucket of information that was good for me that I've been able to put in my little container that I like to use for myself. And I guess the main thing with diet that I found is doing the typical bodybuilding diet of your whey proteins once or twice a day, your chicken breast for dieting specifically, 4 times a day for your lean protein, and then some fish in there too. And then the same carbs, and then also eggs and egg whites. And after dieting since I was 18 and eating a tremendous amount of this food, when I did the Amateur Olympia in 2019, and afterwards, it was post-show. I wasn't super disciplined. I ate a bunch of food, gained a bunch of weight real quick, and a month afterwards, I checked myself in the doctor, and I had my appendix taken out. And when they took my appendix out, they're like, dude, you had inflammation all in your digestive tract. It wasn't just your appendix. Your appendix was super swollen, and we were able to take that out, but you were inflamed everywhere. So I went and took a food sensitivity test, and all my foods that I ate specifically for prep, egg whites was super elevated for inflammation, dairy products, whey protein, and chicken was slightly elevated. So pretty much my prep foods were elevated, and redoing it again since then, those inflammation markers are lower because I eat them less. And what I've morphed into is trying to have more of a variety of a diet within means of good food. So I just find that abusing your body with same foods day after day seem to at least some people, I think everyone's different, to afflict your body in some way when you're just getting the same stuff. And for me personally, variety works a little better. Different protein sources, veggies, and some. I'm pretty strict on carbohydrates. I pretty much stick to rice, some potatoes, and I do some oats. And I really don't deter much carbs besides that. So anyway.
And what do your macros look like on and off season?
Yeah. I'm not pushing it right now. I've been post-contest now for coming up on 4 months. And pretty much I just, my macros are about 3,000 calories a day. So basically maintenance level right now. I'm not pushing it. I pushed it up to over 5,000 calories last prep, which I think was a little too much. I was gaining too much body fat. So I've tried to be more of a minimalist approach now, where I'll slowly creep up food this year, and it'll just be by 100, 200 calorie jumps. And if I'm putting on a half a pound of muscle or weight that week, then we'll just keep it pushing that way. And I'm going to keep my macros actually less and maintain a leaner physique as I'm growing, and work with less food and not disturb my GI tract so much with just all the stress of food. But yeah, my macros about 3,000 right now, not too crazy high.
So when you up your macros, what is, or when you up your calories, is that what you mean? You up your calories?
That's what I mean, yeah.
What does that look like with macros? Is it more carbohydrate that you're increasing, or are you increasing everything equally? Like in case viewers don't know, macros are protein, carbohydrate, and fat. So there's 3 macronutrients, and there's micronutrients that are consisting of vitamins and minerals. And we're not going to talk about that today because that's not really what this topic is about. But what does that look like for you? Though.
Yeah. And it all depends also, like, if there's PEDs involved too, right? So right now, since there's not, I just try to pretty much my protein. If I'm at 200 grams, I'm under 200 pounds, 190 pounds. So I keep my protein a little above 200, we'll say right now. And then really I just try to increase carbohydrates, try to keep fat around 100 a day. I think mine are set at like 86 right now. But generally, as my uptick of training gets a little harder, I keep my protein about the same. And I just jack my carbs up a little bit. And that's generally where I'm getting extra calories from, as it seems, at least in my body, to give me the output and the healing I need to recover well. And I don't need, an excess of 50 grams of protein a meal, and need to continue to increase that because my body, I just know, is not absorbing all that. And now if I do get on a little PEDs and I'm starting to push it that way, that might change a little bit, where I might up my protein a little bit, which I don't find that you always need to, because you have more anabolism with some PED usage. So you're actually going to use the protein intake better to equip more muscle, even if you kept your protein about the same and increase carbohydrate intake, because your output's going to be a little harder. So generally I increase my carbs, and my protein stays roughly around 200, 220 a day. And fat's always no over 100, or I just get fat. So.
And so how does your training look on an off season? Are you pushing as hard off season as you do on season? Or the training obviously probably changes a little bit in prep, because you're a little bit calorie deprived, right?
Exactly, in the deficit. Yeah, I mean, I guess the main difference with going into a prep, is your energy intake is not as good because you're in such a deficit, but you still have a higher output, and you're trying to, make your muscles peak at the maximum level of look. So usually your training is upticked, your calories are lower. So really you just that's just prepping 101, where you just kind of got to get through it. But as far as it looks, I mean, I'm always training hard on season or off season. I just do like holding weeks. So that's what I call right now. I'm in a holding phase from my last show to when I start to push it for off season, where I'm just holding at a maintenance calorie or macro amount to maintain my muscle, still have good recovery, but I'm really not throttling up calories until I really start pushing to accrete muscle. I'm really just holding right now to make sure I keep my tissue, keep my macros high enough to maintain the muscle, and not get too fat. So yeah. So definitely changes from prep to off-season pushes. I increase my calories. I need to make sure I'm training a little harder, so those calories, those macros, are going to where they need to go.
And are you training people right now?
Just online. I have clients online, a couple competitors and lifestyle people. I don't have a huge window of time for that, so I keep it pretty minimum of just people that really, really need the help and want the help. So yes, I train people online, but I don't promote it. So,
but we just promoted it.
Yeah, right.
Now you're gonna get a lot of emails and phone calls.
Yeah, exactly. I still got my cap, so hopefully I got a space. So.
And how about you, Adam? Kind of talk about what you promote and what you do for yourself.
Yeah,
you're training clients currently, right?
Yeah, I train clients primarily online right now. Elias and I are running Mesa and Phoenix. Yeah. It's nearly impossible to be able to train people in person right now. So primarily online for competitors, people who are serious, people that need the coach to get them ready for a show, but don't need you to hold their hand the entire way. That's just kind of where I'm at right now with my coaching. In terms of diet macros for myself, very similar to Elias. We grew up together, kind of figured this out together in the beginning, and same with him. I was eating 6-7 meals a day that were chicken, dozen eggs a day, and it's kind of what we knew when we were starting. Was eat some chicken and some rice, eat some eggs, and you'll get big. This is what we knew. Until we got older, I started realizing certain things for me, uncomfortable bloating, my foggy brain, a lot of things were going on. And about 5 years ago, I was working for a college, and I got that food sensitivity test, 12, 13 years of training without ever getting a food sensitivity test, and found out that, highly sensitive to chicken, highly sensitive to eggs, dairy, all these things that I was eating. And so I did transition to more of a variety of foods, kind of like Elias had mentioned. I don't eat the same foods all the time. I might maybe weekly or monthly, I'm changing the food sources, meaning like the different meats that I'm eating, the different proteins, but my macros will remain the same. And I've noticed that for me, I no longer have those, like the bloat, the fogginess, the lack of pumps. When I've gotten my food sensitivity test redone, you know, it's not extremely elevated because I'm not eating eggs every day or chicken every single day. I'm switching it up. But, you know, honestly similar to Elias, you know, my protein intake about 220 a day. Whether I'm bulking, cutting, you know,
because we weigh about the same.
We weigh about the same. Been doing this for a while, and for me that tends to be good. Fats for me are a bit lower, maybe 50 to 70 grams a day. It's kind of where I remain.
Also, that's why he's leaner than me.
But my carbohydrates are the ones that I personally adjust, and that can be extreme. You know, if I'm cutting for one of my preps, you know, my carbs could go as low as 100, 150 a day, which for me is really low. Bulking, I can be upwards of 1,000 grams a day of carbohydrates if I'm bulking hard.
It's a big chunk of the calories.
Yeah, it's a big chunk. So, you know, for me, definitely carbohydrates are what I'm primarily adjusting if I'm bulking or cutting. Obviously, the workouts will change in the sense of more, you know, cardio aspect if I'm trying to get leaner. Pulling back on the cardio if I'm, you know, trying to bulk. I don't need to be doing 45 minutes, hour of cardio a day if I'm trying to bulk. But macro wise, you know, I think Elias and I take a similar approach on it in terms of what we do. It's worked for us. I know there's a lot of research out now that shows differently with how macros are actually, you know, being utilized in the body, responding in the body, which is fascinating.
Which we're about to find out a little more.
Which I'm definitely, you know, I want to certainly get into that. But, you know, my background, having a degree in kinesiology as well as nutrition and healthy living, you know, it's about 10 years ago I got those degrees. But it's interesting with the new research coming out that we'll get into. But, you know, well-rounded diets, carbohydrates being a primary fuel source. And I was always told, you know, in school, you know, something I learned, 130 grams of carbohydrates is what it takes to fuel your brain for an average person. That varies.
The glycogen,
you know, having that glycogen, having that glucose in the body, you know, for training. You know, it's something I always learned was a very important macronutrient, a very crucial macronutrient. Obviously, you know, it's worked for us. Elias has gone pro, you know, eating this way. I have clients who have gone pro, and you know, I'm really curious to see, you know, your thoughts and your take on it, because you know, there's always new evidence-based practices, things that are always changing. It's still hard for me to wrap my mind around what we're about to get into, but the research is showing that this is the case. So I'm really curious to hear your thoughts on macronutrient breakdown, what that looks like, and physiologically what's happening with the body when eating a high-carb diet or a carbohydrate-focused diet versus what you're going to get into.
Or as you might say, if carbs are actually essential or not.
You heard my spiel, right? So I consume different kind of diet. I'm Carnivore, and there are...
Say it one more time.
Carnivore. So there's... Ketogenic diet is actually a more species-appropriate diet for humans. We're Homo sapiens sapien, and we've evolved to be carnivorous. So it's only been about the last 5 generations that we've been consuming carbohydrates at the rate that we do. For 10,000 generations, we actually consume animal products only. And very rarely did we come across a plant food that we were willing to consume.
And it was maybe like a berry or something like that.
Yeah, and what a lot of people don't realize is that the foods that you are actually coming into contact with now, in terms of produce, have been hybridized to be higher carbohydrate, sweeter, higher fructose, higher sucrose.
More palatable. Yeah.
Right. So, so you know, as we were, you know, evolving, for lack of a better way of putting it, and that has nothing to do with religion or anything like that, but as we've evolved, and we have evolved over time, we have not been consuming plant foods on a regular basis, and sometimes not at all. So the ketogenic diet is actually more human appropriate and species appropriate for us to consume. I started doing a lot of research on this diet. The reason is because about 4 years I went keto. Just on my own, I was curious. In medical school, we learned a lot about different ways of eating and the implications for health and what it did biochemically in our body. So I really wanted to try the keto diet. And 4 years ago, I took the leap. It was about a week of transitioning from using glucose as fuel to ketones, right? Because when we consume a higher fat diet, we start producing, our body starts producing on its own ketones, and then our body starts using the ketones in place of glucose for fuel. And it was about a week where I felt really tired as I was transitioning, but after that, it was actually day 3, I felt the worst. Day 7, I was like amazing. It's like the switch went on. And I wrote a book, it's called The Pain Solution, and in that book, there is a lot of information about the ketogenic diet. Since I wrote that book, which I published it 2 years ago, I have learned a lot more. And I've actually even designed my diet even differently than I was doing it starting 4 years ago. So now I call myself Ketovore. There's 3 different ways of going into ketosis: the ketogenic diet, Ketovore, and Carnivore. Carnivores are just, they only eat animal products. There's not even a plant fat in their diet. The reason I call myself Ketovore is because I still will consume avocado, coconut oil, and olive oil, and some plant fats. No seed oils. Seed oils are bad. You do not want to consume seed oils. They're highly inflammatory. So the implications of this diet are very interesting, and I've also been helping competitors get on this diet for the best results in the gym. My carbohydrate consumption on a daily basis is 20 grams or lower. So I'm basically consuming 50% fat and 50% protein, and some days it's almost no carbohydrate.
And the carbs are coming from maybe some leafy greens, some extracurricular little.
It's actually coming from like the avocado.
Okay, yeah.
And that kind of thing. And so if I'm only consuming 20 grams on workout days, then it's basically coming from, avocado is actually a fruit.
Yeah.
Even though it's a kind of a unique fruit in that it's mostly fat and it has good fat in it. And, so it's not like seed oils, which are highly inflammatory and should not be in our diet at all.
For sure.
So I switched over. I'm practically a carnivore. I practically eat carnivore on a daily basis with just a small amount of, like I said, some plant fats. What I've noticed with this diet, just from my personal experience, is that there's no portion control. I eat as much as I want. I eat till I'm comfortably stuffed. I personally am eating about 4 large meals a day of fat and protein, and it is about 50-50. And I have amazing energy in the gym. My lean muscle mass is increased significantly without doing anything different. I am going to, in a couple months, maybe a month or 2, test my blood work again to see where my hormone levels are at, because what we're also finding is with this appropriate way of eating, that hormone levels, primarily testosterone, will go up naturally. And it's not uncommon when I run blood work for a 20 or 30-year-old to have testosterone levels that are subnormal. So this diet really helps to optimize our hormone levels. And also, if you think about it, our body is made of cholesterol. So when our cholesterol levels are low, we have low functioning everything.
Hormones,
the hormones especially, and other biochemical markers. Our brain is made of cholesterol. Crazy. Our cells, our cell lipid layer is made of cholesterol. So when we don't consume enough fat, we're not producing enough cholesterol to produce the biochemical components that we need for life. So I am carnivore, Ketovore. I call myself Ketovore because I do have a couple little plant fat items in my diet. Now, carbohydrate is not an essential nutrient. We've lived with it without it, for thousands of years, and it's only been about the last 5 generations that we've actually had a moderate to high carbohydrate consumption in our diet. And this is primarily due to the fact that we're no longer going out and killing animals or eating the remains of animals that we come across. That's what we used to do.
Also eating all their organs either.
Yep, and the organs, like the liver, the brain. That's something that was left over. If there was a remains of an animal that we would come across, the brain was untouched because we have the ability to take a rock and break the skull, right, and get the brains out, whereas like a lion wouldn't. So the brain would be left over. They wouldn't really necessarily eat all the organ meats, so those would be left over, and we as Homo sapiens sapien would eat those organ meats. And there's actually a process in the body. There are cells that are obligate glucose metabolizers. The only cell that is 100% glucose reliant is our red blood cells.
Or red blood cells.
Red blood cells, yeah. Every other cell in our body can function on ketones. And what the liver has is an amazing ability to produce glucose as needed for the body from proteins and fats. And so it'll start with fats. It'll use the fat first, and then it'll move to the proteins. That is a process called gluconeogenesis. And so when we're only consuming fats and proteins in our diet, and there's no carbohydrate, our liver will produce the amount of protein required for life to sustain the cells that are requiring it, that are obligated.
Like red blood cells.
Yeah, like red blood cells. So I've been doing this specific diet for a few months now, and I actually feel amazing. I have no issues in terms of energy. My sleep is good. My sleep-wake cycle is on. I don't feel tired in the morning. I don't have any energy lows throughout the day, and I just keep going. So I've been getting people on this diet in my medical practice, and it's really made a difference, not only in their performance in the gym, their lean muscle mass, and like I said, we're not encouraging portion control. You can eat as much protein and fat with this diet as you want, and not have to worry about gaining excess fat. Now, here's what happens physiologically and biochemically in the body when we're eating carbohydrates without protein in our fat. It's mostly the fat that we're concerned about, because when we're looking at a cholesterol panel, now me as a doctor, I'll run a lipid panel on my patients. That lipid panel in general will consist of total cholesterol, LDL, right? Those are the two components that conventional medical doctors will look at, and they freak out if it's over 200, right? Yeah. And then we have the HDL, the VLDL, and the triglycerides. Those are just the general panel that I'll run as a lipid panel. Now, the total cholesterol is just the sum of all these components, right? Then we have the LDL, which is low density lipoprotein, which has been called bad cholesterol. Well, it's not actually bad. If we have low levels, our immune system doesn't function properly. And we're more susceptible to cancers, chronic disease, and other things. HDL is heart protective, so we want that to be high as well. So we actually want our LDL and our HDL to be high. And then, but the caveat is we want our triglycerides to be low, which comes from carbohydrate in the diet, and we want our VLDL to be low. VLDL is a definitive marker of our risk for cardiac event, like heart attack or stroke right now. So lipo-A is a genetic marker. It doesn't really tell us what is actually going on inside of us biochemically and physiologically right now. The VLDL tells us what's going on right now in our body in terms of our risk. Okay, so what happens is when we're consuming carbohydrate with fat, and the myth is that we need to lower fat and not worry about carbohydrate. Well, a lot of these studies were funded by the food industry and pharmaceutical companies, and they're very biased. And they actually have scientists and doctors do these studies and design them in a way that will support their agenda. We can get into that more.
Makes sense.
I do have access to those studies.
Got milk?
Right. And Coca-Cola saying that sugar is just an empty calorie and it doesn't do any harm to our body. Actually, sugar is harming our bodies. That's
100%.
That's why we have chronic disease exponentially
100%.
in this day and age. We never saw the disease that we see now before 5 generations ago.
For refined sugar and all that.
Right. So the LDL we want to be high, and we want triglycerides to be low, which means when we lower the carbohydrate in our diet, triglycerides go down, right? And that means triglyceride and VLDL go hand in hand. Triglycerides high, then VLDL is going to be high. Triglycerides low, VLDL will be low. Okay, so it's directly related to the carbohydrate in our diet. VLDL is a definitive marker of our risk for cardiac disease, our risk of heart attack or stroke right now. So when I look at a panel with a patient, and let's say everything's high, including LDL, the VLDL, the triglycerides are high, their triglycerides are approaching 200, maybe more. I've seen triglycerides like in the 500s.
Jeez.
Wow.
That is scary. Then we run an A1C, which is what your blood sugar's been over a 3-month period, and it's 12. I mean, it should be below 5.2. So that means that they're just
sugar and
inflamed
carbs and
Yeah.
inflammation.
They've got diabetes and they're at risk for just losing limbs and eyesight and everything. At that point, right? So what I'll do is I'll take that patient, I'll modify their diet, and I'll have them come back 12 weeks later. 3 months is a pretty good marker of time to determine how this is going to affect their health.
Mm-hmm.
And what I see is not only are they feeling better, their joints don't hurt, they're losing fat, they're gaining muscle without doing anything different. I'll get them moving if they're not moving, but you do not want a patient that hasn't been moving to start lifting heavy weights because they're going to get injured. So I'll say, start walking, start doing some body weight exercises, come back in 12 weeks. And then what I'll do is I'll run an NMR. An NMR is a breakdown of the particle size of these different components in the lipid panel that tell us definitively what our LDL is doing, for example. Like we might have an LDL 300 and a cholesterol 450. But what does that 300 LDL consist of? Mm-hmm. So what we have is particle size of large and small LDL. Okay, so we have large particle LDL, we have small particle LDL. Small particle LDL is bad, okay? The large particle LDL is what we produce naturally when we're healthy to support our lipid layer, our brain health, our hormone production, and we want that, okay? We want a lot of it, a lot more than what doctors have been telling patients. We want a lot of it because the higher our LDL, the longer we live, the less susceptible we are to chronic disease and cancers and so forth, okay? Now, when I run the NMR, like I said, it breaks down the particle size, so we'll look and see what the small particle LDL and the large particle LDL breakdown is of the total LDL or the LDL-C. When the small particle LDL is high, we know that the patient is very inflamed, that they have a high carbohydrate diet. Even moderate carbohydrate diets can produce too much small particle LDL. And what happens is we have the liver over here, right? And it has receptors on it to take up large particle LDL, and it'll transfer it to other parts of the body to do good work. Well, the liver and no cell in the body has a receptor to take up that small particle LDL. So what happens is our immune system identifies as that being something bad, foreign, because it is a damaged, inflamed particle. And our macrophages, which go around and eat things that don't belong in our body, will gobble up that small particle LDL. It becomes what's called a foam cell. A foam cell, macrophage consumes that small particle LDL, circulates through our blood. It also isn't taken up. It's just doing its best to try and contain that damaged particle, and it will settle underneath the lining of our arteries and create calcium plaques, which are the hard plaques. So what we have, if we have plaques, is we'll have hard plaque and we'll have soft plaque. The hard plaque is, hardened over, and that's what breaks off and causes thrombi, when it circulates through the blood and ends up lodging itself in a small vessel of the brain and heart, and then we have a heart attack or stroke. So that's what happens. Now, when we lower our carbs to almost nothing, and that can vary, it depends on the patient, and there's a lot of details that determines how many carbohydrates I may have my patient consuming during the day, because everybody's different biologically, biochemically, physiologically. When we lower the carbohydrates to almost nothing, then we don't have what's called glycation. So when carbohydrate and fat exist together in our diet, goes through the digestive tract, the carbohydrate, the sugar molecule will attach to that LDL and it will glycate. And that's what causes small particle LDL. So when we remove the sugars, and keep in mind that complex carbohydrates turn to sugar once they've gone through our GI tract. Once they enter the bloodstream, they're sugar. Okay, the complexity just means that it might digest a little slower, but it's in the bloodstream. It is sugar. It's a simple sugar, and it comes in contact with that LDL and becomes a small particle LDL. So it glycates and creates a damaged particle. So by lowering carbohydrate, we're not creating that inflammatory reaction in the body. We actually need saturated fat. Saturated fat is required for life. It's required for satiety. Did I say that right? Satiety.
Yeah.
I had to think about that.
Pretty
it's
much.
a weird word. Because the biochemical reaction from our gut to our brain is dependent on saturated fat to tell us when we're full, when we've had enough to eat. If we're eating carbohydrates, that signal is all messed up. It's not regulated well, and food manufacturers know this, and so that's why people will sit down and just pork a bag of chips and still feel hungry. Because that signal is not going to the brain. It's not a proper way of eating. So carbohydrates do not give us that ability to know when we're full. Saturated fat does, and we need saturated fat in our diet because it's the saturated fat that actually emphasizes the production of cholesterol, which we want. Like I said, when we're looking at a cholesterol panel, there's a lot of myths out there in terms of what a cholesterol panel should look like and what doctors should do about it. Now, I've never put a patient on a statin. What I've done is I've helped them with their lifestyle changes to get that modified and changed. And after the patient's been on a carnivore ketogenic type diet for at least 12 weeks, I might just run a lipid panel to see what those larger components are doing, like the triglycerides, the HDL, LDL, VLDL, and the total cholesterol. I might not run an NMR at that point, because what I will see is if the triglycerides are low and the VLDL is low, but everything else is high, then we know we're on the right track. And what I've seen across the board is that is always the case. Once a patient goes ketogenic, and I give patients choice: you want to go keto, you want to go ketovore, you want to go carnivore. Now, sometimes patients say, well, I still love eating plants and certain carbohydrates, so they'll try and modify it so that they're eating a lower amount of those, and that could vary. It has to be definitely below 100, but 50 is better and 20 is ideal. But I will vary that depending on the patient and what their inflammatory markers look like going into this. If they have a thyroid issue, or their testosterone's in the tank and they're only 30, then I know they're inflamed. So I'll say keto may not be the way to go. It may need to be ketovore or carnivore, which is a little more strict that way, right? So I give them a choice, and then when they come back and we look at their cholesterol panel, their lipid panel, and if it looks good on a keto diet, then we know they're on the right track. Now, here's another thing a lot of people don't realize is that plants are not the same as what they originally were when they came from the earth naturally. Plants, every plant that you consume from the grocery store, from a farmer's market, from your garden, because even the seeds that you get to plant these foods have been hybridized. They've been hybridized to be higher in sugar, higher in carbohydrate, taste different. So the original fruits that we came across on occasion before we started this farming,
even in other countries, they look different. Like a strawberry looks different than an American California grown strawberry.
But even then, the market is worldwide now, so it's even hard to find a proper plant that came originally from Mother Earth, right? Fruits were really seedy and they weren't sweet. That's one thing. They were not sweet. They were just a fraction of the sweetness that they are now. Like a banana, for example, used to be very seedy and kind of bitter, and now they're really sweet and
yummy.
And you can't stop eating them, right? Because they're so sweet. Mangoes, that kind of thing. As a doctor, before I started adapting this way of working with my patients and a way of eating for myself, I used to say, okay, you can eat berries, but only a quarter cup a day max, and that's all that I would allow patients to do. I was still encouraging green leafy vegetables and things like that, but I don't even encourage that anymore, because plants are not essential for life. And so what we know through research and I know from studying plants, had a pretty extensive education on this in medical schools, that plants produce toxins because they don't want us to eat us. Essentially, that's just it in a nutshell.
Lots of
them. They want to survive, right? So there's oxalates, there's phytochemicals and other things like that, lectins in plants that they produce to prevent us from eating them. Now, what I have seen on food allergy panels is that plants are the majority of the sensitivities I see in my patients. Now here's the caveat. Sometimes they'll be allergic to eggs or chicken. Those are very common, pork. But when I take them off the plant foods, those sensitivities go away.
It's interesting.
They go away.
They go away. Yeah. So what's happening is our gut. We have a gut microbiome, and it's designed according to the way we're eating. So if we're eating a high sugar diet, we're gonna have microorganisms in there, including high amounts of my brain just went out the window. Fungus.
Yeah.
Bacteria?
Bacteria?
Candida. That's what
Candida. Candida.
Sorry about that. We'll have a lot of candida and fungus in our gut, and that's craving sugar. When we want something, like, oh man, I just have to have those chips, or I have to have that candy bar, or even
the cookies out there?
The cookies out there, the cookies you guys sell at the gym, right? It's because our gut microbiome is sending signals to the brain telling us it wants to be fed. So it takes about 3 weeks on average. Some people it takes a lot longer. Okay, it depends on how sick they are. But it takes about 3 weeks for our microbiome to really start changing and adapting to our new way of eating. So at first, and carbohydrates are very addictive, even natural carbohydrates that we think are good for us, the rice, the quinoa, the oats, and even you don't see people porking and binging on broccoli, but you'll see them, eating a lot of carbohydrate. Cereals are horrible. That's because our microbiome is adapted to that way of eating. Now, once we change our eating and we start eating a more human appropriate diet, then our microbiome changes to accommodate that. And then we have the proper signals going to the brain, telling us when we're full. You don't see anybody sitting and overeating on fats or proteins, right?
No.
Yeah. So not against vegetables. One thing I have learned through further research is that vegetables, plant foods, I should say, do have a place in our life, and a very important place. And that is if Adam here had the flu, and I wanted to concoct an herbal formula to help him get over the flu faster, then herbs that come from the earth would be appropriate. But once that's resolved, and I might have him continue this herbal formula for like 2 weeks after symptoms are resolved, just to make sure that he's in a healthy state. Then we stop it. We don't continue taking that herbal formula. So it's very medicinal. It's like medicine. When we say food is medicine, well, plant foods are medicine. They really are. They have a place in our life. But it's also, in my opinion, those toxic chemicals that are helping mitigate symptoms of disease. But once the disease is gone, we need to go back to completely eating a human appropriate diet. And that species appropriate, which would be basically 50% animal fat, 50% animal protein.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, my whole thing about it is like every time I lower carbohydrates, right, in prep, that's when I'm digging it out and I'm starting to hurt energy-wise, right?
Yeah.
And I think definitely when you're on a low carbohydrate diet and you're prepping for a show and you got your protein, you got your fats your fat's already minimal, your protein's probably still pretty high.
Yeah.
Now carbs are getting to that 100 or lower. We're probably getting close to that ketogenic state anyway with eating or with training so hard and doing so much cardio, and you eat the carbs and they feel like they're gone already. But it's like in a competitive world, where would you be able to take away?
Exactly my question.
If you were going to diet, right? So if you only now have high fat, high protein, you're gonna have to cut from somewhere, and you already got your output of exercise increased. Where else can you pull from to get the body in shape?
So that's a really good question, and this way of eating is kind of unusual in the competition world.
Yeah.
Because the rule of thumb and the knowledge out there is the common way of eating high carbs when you're off season and lower your carbs when you're on season prepping. So what Eli is experiencing is that it's called keto flu, and you can feel kind of sick and you kind of have a bad attitude. You just don't feel like you have brain energy.
Yeah, exactly. Brain energy. Yeah, you're slow here.
Yeah, slow here. You're just grumpy. That is because you're not fat adapted. So once the patient becomes fat adapted, and you are actually functioning on ketones. So you're not functioning on ketones yet because you still have enough carbohydrate in your diet to make your body think that it needs carbohydrate.
A little bit, yeah.
Once you lower it and you stay to that point for a time, and it varies from everybody. It can be a week to 3 weeks where you have to transition over to ketones. You're going to feel horrible. And that's why competitors, when they lower their carbs,
they feel horrible.
They're lowering everything, actually.
Yeah.
They feel horrible. The reality is that when you eat the protein and fats 50-50, and you're not consuming carbs, you actually are leaner in general.
I see.
So you don't retain the water, you don't have the fat. In fact, I had a little bit here that I thought, well, you know, that's going to be hard to get rid of. Not since I've switched over to a more carnivore way of eating. It just went away. So I'm leaner naturally. Now, in competition, that'd be something that would be really important to work with and see how that's going to affect competition, because it is my opinion that probably won't have to change anything.
Or maybe lower fats a little bit and just increase your workout load or something.
Because fat doesn't equal fat. And fat doesn't cause water retention. So
like a
really,
cardboard,
so it really is not contributing to the ill effects from the diet that is normally consumed, with competitors. You're not going to have that extra fat and that water retention that you would consuming carbohydrates.
True.
So it probably will be maybe lowering your calorie intake a little bit evenly. I don't know. That's something that can be experimented with. But what I do know is that people just in general, whether they are hitting it hard in the gym or not, that they are just naturally leaner. Now, another thing we've seen with this diet is that our hormone production goes up naturally. So when I'm supplementing patients with testosterone, putting them on TRT, it may still be indicated depending on their age and where they're at health-wise going into this, but it's less because we've actually seen, and we've done research studies to prove this, that men's testosterone can go up 50 to 400 points just consuming the diet alone.
Crazy.
So it really is our diet that's putting our hormones in the tank. Of course, over time, our cells and the cells that produce these hormones in more abundance do start to kind of decline in their production, their function. But if you think about it, if we're looking at longevity and consuming a diet that will increase our lifespan and our quality of life, this is really the way to do it. So your cells don't peter out as quickly, and science has proven that telomeres, the little caps on the end of our chromosomes that determine our lifespan, are designed to allow us to live for about 125 years. So when we're jacking ourselves up with these, bad eating, stress, not sleeping, drinking alcohol, and environmental toxins, which we can talk about another time, but that's something that we definitely want to the things we have control over, we want to definitely reduce our exposure to toxicity. But sugar is toxic. Fructose is also toxic. Fructose is very toxic to the brain, and that's the fruits that people think are healthy for them are not actually healthy. We've designed foods to meet our own agenda, right? And so we become addicted to sugar, and we think fruit's good for us, and we like the way it tastes, but really it's not even natural for us to eat as it is. So
what would happen? There's a couple questions I have. So for the camera and for you guys, I actually have 6 clients who I've been discussing this with, and they are open to trying this. So I'm actually doing kind of a ketovore diet with 6 of my patients, clients, whatever you want to call them, to give it a shot because they wanted to check it out. I've been curious since we've been talking. It's new to me. I've really only learned, from you, but I've been doing some research and seeing that everything you're saying is it's all backed up by the research. So, I know you mentioned that doesn't sound like you've had competitors, go through a show and do this. My thoughts, like, how do I do this? How do I keep them in ketosis? Get them to get leaner with like a high fat diet. If you drop the fats too much, wouldn't they drop out of ketosis since the fat content's not high enough?
So we want to be really careful about that. Like I don't push you to try not to count calories. But I would guess that probably on a daily basis, I bet you I'm consuming between 3 and 5,000 calories a day. Just
quite a bit.
That's a lot. Yeah.
And so, and I've lost, fat, and I've gained lean muscle mass. I mean, my muscle mass is more just changing my diet, even from a ketogenic diet to this. So, so with competition, that's something that is to be continued, because I'm working with other trainers here at the gym and their clients and getting them on the keto diet. Some of them came in with health problems like Hashimoto's or low thyroid. Their testosterone is horrible. I mean, and some of them are older, so you'd kind of expect that from what we've been seeing naturally. But at the same time, how natural is that? It's not. It's what we're seeing as a result of modern living, but it's not natural. It's not natural for our hormones to be in the tank, and we're seeing everything improve with this. So, I'm willing to help with that. And one thing you could do is you can have them join the TG Wellbeing program and get them on the blood, program. Get the kits going and get them on board with checking their blood work and their hormones. And then we could do a comparison. We don't have to run the NMR, which is not on the TG panel. We could just do a panel now, which includes the testosterone and the lipid panel. And then after they've been carnivore for about 3 months, which is about the time they do another panel, we could do a comparison and see how it's improving their health and also how their gains are. That's one thing. That's an experiment I want to start running right now with trainers, is to start doing measurements and doing BMI to see how this is
embodied before and after.
Right, because we do have the proof and we have the evidence. We have other doctors on YouTube, for example. I don't have a lot of videos on this on my YouTube channel yet, so I've been referring people to Dr. Kim Berry's channel and Dr. Anthony Chafee. Dr. Kim Berry, he's family practice medicine. He did emergency room medicine, and he was promoting the standard American diet, Weight Watchers and, eat less, move more, routine to patients. And he thought
it was the right thing to do.
He thought, well, it was the right thing to do. And patients kept coming back sicker and worse off. And he just thought, well, these people are just not compliant. That's what doctors think, but they really were doing everything that he was recommending. And then he started doing that because he was gaining weight. He just felt horrible and he was inflamed and had all kinds of symptoms. And he started slowly researching diet and what's appropriate. And that's how he came to be carnivore. Now he promotes that on his channel. Dr. Anthony Chafee, he is a neurosurgeon. He's in his residency. He's currently located in Australia, but he has a channel that actually goes over not only how beneficial a carnivore diet is, and he's completely carnivore. He just eats meat, fatty meat, and you need fat, okay? You need this fat. You don't want to be eating lean cuts. In fact, you can go to your butcher and ask for the tallow. They'll probably just give it to you because that's the fat that they turn off the meat. That's what you want. That's what you need for life.
I don't even like it like that.
Yeah, but it's because you're not used to it.
Carly does.
You get used to it and you start cooking with it. Like I save my bacon grease and I cook everything with it.
So you're eating a bunch of bacon too?
Yeah, I'm eating a bunch of bacon.
So there you guys go. You can eat bacon and stop eating your sugar.
Yeah.
No maple syrup with it.
Yeah, no maple syrup. Don't eat the toast and the pancakes. And then Dr. Berry's wife, Nisha, you can find her on YouTube. Just search Nisha. She's the only probably Nisha out there. And she has a channel where she shows you how to cook meals based on this way of eating. So there's a lot of resources out there. And I like to refer people out because I only have so much time in a day as a doctor. I barely have time to come here and do this, but I know it's important. And it's important for us as a team to come together and bring you valuable information, because our whole goal is to teach you the truth about how to improve yourself, your health, your fitness, and just to get you on the right track. 100%. So we can get your clients on the TG Wellbeing program. And get them optimized. And then
super easy way
to and monitor them through it. I just find it so fascinating because, again, going through school, getting my education, we actually had a lab that studied keto and basically debunked how that it is bad for you. And we were taught in school how bad it is, what it does to the blood, how it causes it to get more viscous and thicker. And this was what I was learning in school. So again, it's hard for me to wrap my mind around ketogenic being good because I was always taught that it was so bad. But the one thing,
especially for athletes,
you would think, exactly, for athletes in particular. But the one thing that when we were talking, other than I trust your knowledge and everything, but when I was in school, after we talked, I went home and I was thinking, I'm researching that day. I'm like, in school we were taught keto was very, very bad for you. You had to have carbohydrates. It's an essential nutrient. You can't function off of it. However, what we were also taught when I was in school was people who have, Parkinson's disease, celiac disease, at risk for heart attack, diabetics, et cetera, that a ketogenic diet's good.
Right.
So why is it good for somebody who's unhealthy? This is what my mind was going. I'm like, an unhealthy person, a ketogenic diet has been shown to be beneficial for them, to get them back into a healthy manner and get them physiologically functioning well, the hormones working well. Yeah. So I was like, okay, so I'm taught that carbohydrates are good, keto bad, but if you're sick, keto can be good. Sick and certain things that we'd be learning. So I'm like, so why wouldn't a ketogenic, ketovore, carnivore diet be healthy beforehand to prevent all of these diseases, prevent all of these issues? So that is actually the night after we talked, I spent the whole night researching and thinking about this. And that's why I decided that I'm going to give this a shot and try it with my clients who were open to it. I didn't push it on them. I asked them if they were open to it, and 6 of them said, yeah. So my thought process again was like, well, the sick need it. Why wouldn't the healthy need to prevent themselves from becoming sick?
Exactly.
So it does back up everything you're saying, everything that I'm learning. It's still, even talking right now, I'm like, this still doesn't sound right coming out of my mouth, but it's a big learning curve. But it's fascinating. I'm giving it a shot myself.
So we're gonna have real data with our blood work. I'll bring in a kid to show you guys.
Yep.
So we're actually going to be able to analyze a little bit like how this is working in our bodies with blood labs and training, bodybuilding style training, how our labs look.
And so
I'm going to grab a kit for these guys.
Yeah.
Let me tell you a little bit more about my journey in a little bit more detail. So as a doctor, I was also doing that. I was putting patients on a carnivore diet.
Don't allow it.
With ulcerative
we're in cahoots. You got my number, bro. We'll make sure we take care of you.
Well, symptom-free, completely. They would go back to their GI doctor for a scope and completely clear of symptoms and disease. And then, of course, I was using the ketogenic diet for my diabetics, especially the brittle diabetics that were having a hard time getting their sugars under control. A1C's pristine. And so I started thinking that too. Like, well, why am I recommending, and I wasn't even recommending the standard American diet, I was recommending more of a Mediterranean plant-based diet. With leafy greens and stuff like that, and my patients weren't getting 100%. In fact, I have a case where I did recommend the Mediterranean diet with a patient that has Hashimoto's. Her antibodies were off the chart, well in the thousands, and what we look for is the TPO antibody, which is more specific for inflammation of the thyroid, and then TG, which is TG antibody, which is more of a marker of your risk for cancer of the thyroid. Okay, so I run both, and I put her on low dose naltrexone to bring those antibodies down, which works really well, but they were still lingering just right there, on the high level. They were under 1,000, but just lingering like in the 500, 400 range, and we just couldn't get them down. And so and she was eating, what we would consider a healthy diet, Mediterranean diet, with some healthy fats, green leafy vegetables, no alcohol, no grains, no fruit, or if she ate fruit, it was like very minimal, like a quarter cup of berries a day. And then, lean meats. When she switched to a carnivore diet and she was willing to try this, her antibodies dropped to almost nothing. Almost nothing. So then I started thinking, wow, why am I stopping with just mitigating or treating disease instead of mitigating, right? So we want to interfere with the process of people becoming symptomatic.
Yeah.
And by putting them on this diet, even in a healthy state, we know that long term they're going to be in a state of health, because it is a rule that disease cannot live in a healthy body, and this is absolutely the most anti-inflammatory diet that you can consume, and inflammation is the root of all disease, and inflammation comes from the gut.
Yeah.
I have a whole episode on gut health and leaky gut, but like that was my journey too.
Yeah.
So then I had a couple of patients that came in that were strict carnivore, and I was kind of telling them at the time, they may watch this, I don't know, but I was kind of telling them at the time, well, you should probably consume some olive oil for heart health, and I wasn't really sure. I was kind of still that mindset that isn't that going to jack your cholesterol to the point where it's going to be dangerous?
Yeah.
That's not actually true, because when we ran an NMR on these patients, it was beautiful. Their small particle LDL was almost undetectable. And so one of the patients, he actually said he signed a consent for me to use his results to share with people. But I'm going to come here with my blood results, and I'm going to share it with you. And then maybe Adam and Eli, if he wants to get on board, would like to try that as well. We're not saying you have to do this, but even when a patient is sitting in front of me and I say, this is your best option for optimizing your health, for getting, out of this disease state into a state of health, this is your absolute best bet. And then I give them a choice. And I have patients that don't comply, or they kind of comply, and it's rare. Most of my patients are on board. I'd say 90% of my patients that I've presented this to are completely on board. There's like 2% that are so addicted to their way of eating that they're having a hard time, even though they want to do it. It's hard.
Yeah, or they just don't care. They want to eat their chips,
Or they want to have their alcohol, and they want to have their sugar and their pancakes in the morning.
What would happen then if somebody's on a ketovore diet, carnivore, keto diet in general, any of that? One big meal of carbohydrates, they're out of ketosis. So my question is, somebody on this kind of diet, a refeed meal, or somebody is like, I just want a pizza today. I've been on this for 3 months. I want a pizza. Now they're out of ketosis. Are they going to get like a glucose sickness? Like you would getting into ketosis, and you're starting all over again the process to get back into ketosis. I mean, to me, it's probably like the most strict diet in the sense of you have to stick to it or you're out of ketosis. Right. So how do you balance that? I mean, it just means no carbs ever. I mean, if you want to fully stay in a ketosis state.
Yeah, so it's kind of a misconception that we're always in ketosis. We do tend to move in and out a little bit. Like if your meat is mostly raw, there's carbohydrate that we're consuming with that, right? Like with the avocado after my workouts and those kind of things. But the thing about consuming your carbs right after your workout, if you have any carbs in your diet at all, you want to do it right after workout, because the cell is in a different physiological state right after we have exerted ourselves. So if we're just resting and we haven't worked out, then the cell needs a transporter, what's called a glut transporter, GLUT, and it's required to bring glucose into the cell to help go into the Krebs cycle and the electron transport chain to produce ATP, right? Well, after we've exercised, the cells are open to receiving glucose without a transporter, so it's just by diffusion.
So you don't need GLUT4.
Right. The glucose will go right into the cell. So if you're going to consume any carbohydrate, it'd be right after your workout, and that would be, and you kind of work with it a little bit to see how much is too much. Yeah. Because to be honest with you, we don't need as much carbohydrate as we think we do, even after a really hard workout. Because I'll go work out really hard, and then I'll consume about 10 to 20 grams of carbohydrate after my workout, and I'm fine. We don't need 100, 200, right after a workout. So we can kind of work with it that way. We are kind of moving in and out of ketosis, but once you're generally in ketosis, you move right back in very easily. Okay. So you're not just completely in ketosis all the time, but when we call it ketogenic, is because our primary fuel source is ketones. And like I said, the liver can do what's called gluconeogenesis to produce the glucose required. Even the glucose is required for our muscles. Our muscles, they can function about 70 to 80% on ketones, so they do need some glucose, right? And then the brain and the heart actually function better on ketones. Even some of the biochemistry videos out there will tell you that the brain is a glucose obligate organ. It's not. It's just that's what we know from modern day living and eating. Yep. But you also see these people preaching this. One guy, I saw him do a video 2 years apart, and he's like fatter in this video than this one. I'm thinking, well, you should probably consider the ketogenic diet, you know?
Yeah, actually try it out.
You are claimed.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah, so we are moving in and out of ketosis, but people that eat ketogenic go right back into ketosis very easily. Now, if you just want to splurge on carbohydrates, you will feel sick. You will not feel good. It'll be like a really bad hangover. You just got to go lay down and sleep it off. So but you know, when you talk about restriction, what's more restrictive, being sick or being healthy?
Yeah.
And you know, we try and justify our way of eating with all these carbohydrate foods, even the ones that are supposedly healthy, because we're addicted. Yeah. Carbohydrate in every form is very addictive, and to move out of that way of eating and that mindset, like I said, it's dictating what we eat. So once we've been about 3 weeks away from carbohydrates, then we don't want it anymore. And maybe right after workout, you might consume some carbs. You gotta be really careful about that too. And, you know, working with my patients and working with their clients, we can help teach them about that and help them to understand the best way to do that. It is important that you work with a qualified trainer if you want to get these results, and a doctor like myself. The reason for that is because you can go out and do a carnivore diet on your own, that's no problem. But when you're trying to optimize yourself with muscle gains or you're trying to get results in the gym, you definitely want to work with a doctor and qualified trainers, because it's going to be hard to do on your own. You need to look at blood work. You need somebody who has the knowledge and the science to back up what we're seeing and how we guide you.
So that's all good. I have so many questions that keep coming to mind. You know, another question I have, say you have somebody, just say they're eating about 2,500 calories. Let's say 250 grams of protein, 250 carbs, 50 grams of fat, which is like 2,450. You have somebody now going to a ketogenic, ketovore diet. They're getting ready for a show. I know you said there's no range, eat till you're full. Would that still be the case, somebody prepping for a show, or do we want to match those macros with would we want to bump the protein higher? Does that matter? You know, I know you say you don't calculate macros, but you know, going from somebody eating a specific way who maybe follows macros, who's really to a T, this is how much I eat, and they want a macro diet for this ketovore diet. They want something laid out for them. Would you match the caloric intake they were doing on their rounded diet with carbohydrates and everything?
So let me just start with this. Humans are the only mammal on Earth that counts their calories. It counts macros. You know, you've never seen an overweight lion on the Serengeti. You've never seen any animal out there that is carnivore that sits and calculates their macros, right? And they're all lean. So it really is a change of your way of thinking. It's going to take time for people to wrap their mind around it, but it really is not necessary to count macros anymore. And
just eat till you're content, eat till you're full.
Till you're comfortably stuffed. So don't just stop where you're full. Go a little bit over that, because your body is going to utilize everything you consume. It's not going to store it as fat, right? It's going to store it might store just enough for life. I mean, we need fat stores to help support our metabolism and just life in general, our function. But at the same time, the way that people are eating today in this day and age, they're consuming so many carbohydrates that's been being stored as fat. So it's actually the sugars in your diet that's being stored as fat. Fat doesn't equal fat. Fat does not store as fat. Fat goes through a process through the liver, and it's dispersed throughout the body to do work, to be the building blocks of our body. So we need fats and proteins for our building blocks, for our brain function, for our hormones. We need cholesterol. The thickening of the blood is not, it's a myth. You might see thicker blood with people who, on a blood draw, with people that consume a higher fat diet, but their carbs are so low that it's not, the LDL is not sticky. It's not attaching to anything. It's actually going to the liver, and the liver's dispersing it to do work. So you're actually utilizing everything you consume, and people's bowel movements will be different too. Like when you're consuming a high carbohydrate diet, even a moderate carbohydrate diet, or even a lot of plant foods with fiber, bowel movements will be huge and frequent, right? It's because what your body's doing is it's getting rid of a lot of stuff it doesn't need, waste. You don't have waste in this kind of diet. So bowel movements will be smaller and less frequent. It shouldn't be difficult at first when people start on this diet. You might have constipation or diarrhea. It has a lot to do with the gut biome.
Yeah.
The microbiome changing to adapt to your new way of eating. But people can get diarrhea, they can get constipation. A little magnesium at bedtime helps that. Not if they have diarrhea, but you know, if they have diarrhea, we just want to stay hydrated and kind of ride it out. It shouldn't last long, maybe a week, you know, and then it usually starts to resolve. If it lasts longer than that, it's probably not the diet, it's probably a GI bug or something like that that they're experiencing. So, but I deal with that on an individual basis. But the diet actually doesn't cause these problems. It's just you've been, you know, eating a crappy diet. Your microbiome is designed to want crappy food. So now it has to change. And those microbiome, the microorganisms in there, some have to die and some have to increase in number. Because we have a little bit of something for everything, including candida or yeast, fungus in our gut, but we don't want high levels of candida in our diet. We need, in our gut, we need some, but people that are eating high carbohydrate diets have so much candida in their gut, and it's causing more inflammation and brain fog, and the next thing you know, they're having numbness and tingling in their hands and feet because of their diet. So there's a lot of reasons. But I would like to do some experiments with some competitors and see like how.
Looks like we're gonna.
Looks
like we're gonna be.
Definitely, you know.
Well, I got 6 right now, so.
Yeah.
And myself 7. I'm not a competitor, but.
Yeah, we could do a pre-competition experiment to see how it goes, and kind of bring back the information to YouTube.
Yeah.
100%.
Let's do it.
Yeah,
that'd be cool.
Do it.
Have our own little test subjects.
Yeah. And what are your thoughts, Eli?
My thoughts are come in and take your blood test. Get some women's one here, some men's one here.
There we go.
Super easy. They're $199. Do your blood lab. You can do another one every 12 weeks, and this is just an easy, non-invasive way to start it. So.
Yeah. And you get it's a snapshot of your health, so you get all the information you need just to see overall what your health is looking like. But this would be enough to help with working like with somebody like Adam or Eli with their program to get you optimized, and you can also work with your diet if you're working with these guys and just really, you know, get you dialed in.
Yep, I love it. I've already taken 2 of them, so every 12 weeks I'm just going to run another one. And always here available at TG, the Gym Mesa, and TG, the Gym Phoeniz.
So you can contact us at the gym here in Mesa. And what's the address?
Address is 1126 South Gilbert Road. That's Mesa, Arizona. And then our phone number is 480-530-4988. Look up TG the Gym Phoeniz for the details.
Adam knows that. So what's
Phoenix is 3901 E Thunderbird Rd. That's Phoenix, Arizona 85032. I do not have the phone number memorized, so you can look that up.
Just call us here at Mesa.
Yep.
Okay?
Yep. Exactly.
And get on board with our program.
Awesome.
Because we're here to help you optimize yourself.
Exactly.
Okay?
That's right.
Hey, check out our shirts.
The shirts.
We might start selling them. So if you guys are interested, let us know and we can have some made. And,
super comfy.
And,
they are super comfy.
So, and get on, you know, we get you some Christmas sweaters.
Some swag.
There we go.
Well, thank you, Dr. Vic, for the information as always. Appreciate it.
Yep. Good stuff.
This is where you come to get the information that you need. You don't want to get it out there. You want to get it here where you're going to get the truth about your health and fitness.
That's right.
All right.
All right.
Till next one.
Ready to flex?
Till next time. Have to.
Okay, got to roll up our sleeves here.
Boom.
Boom. That's where it's
blocking me out. You're too big.
That's where it's at.
I'm double better in mine.
Boom. There it is.
All right, guys.
Awesome.
Next time,
Cool.
and,
see you guys.
See ya.
See ya.
Boom.